Oftentimes, there's way more LTV to be unlocked if you just do one thing: improve order one, subscribe, and save take rates. And I will just like sit on that problem until it's fixed.
Whoever owns inventory planning and the process that you follow is really, 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 really important, because you want to attack retention to drive the outcome that retention should drive in the game you're playing. And it's not the same for each game. All right. And we're back for episode 46. Dylan, what's happening, man?
I'm just laughing because we normally record these on a Monday afternoon. It's Monday morning. We both look a little bit more like we just woke up today.
I actually had the funny thing is I saw myself in the video. I'm like, yeah, I do look more, definitely look more tired than I feel. I had like an exceptionally awesome workout this morning. So like, I feel like I'm ready to bust through a wall, but I looked at my face and I'm like, I look like a dad of 3 kids who got woken up in the middle of the night last night.
I don't have the same excuse for being tired, but I do feel tired this morning. But I'm excited.
Well, you have some sort of an excuse. You have some sort of excuse coming back from your honeymoon. How far is the flight from? Isn't it like a 8 hour flight coming from Hawaii back to Canada, or the part of Canada that you're in?
I did get back like a week ago, so I have had some time to recover. But I have, anyways, it's like if you fly direct from Toronto, it's like 10 hours or just above. But
dang,
to get to certain islands, you can't fly direct. So most of the time, it's like 2 5 to 6 hour flights. So it's a mission.
Well, I'm excited for today's chat. We're talking about a week or two ago, we talked about strategies to improve performance when acquisition is a problem. We're going to talk about the other major, margin dollar stream, which is returning customers. So today we're going to talk about strategies to improve performance when retention is a problem. Dylan, just to get us kicked off here, is there like a single place where you see retention breaking down most frequently?
Well, again, this kind of depends on the game you're playing, as you like to say. There's kind of 2 boats. 1, you're not launching enough products, or 2, more and more for consumable product businesses when we work with them. Basically, what I open up, Shopify, you're on Shopify, which is most stores. It's pretty simple. You open your cohort analysis, dashboard, and analytics. You don't need a third-party app, although there's tons of great lifetime value reporting apps that get you like more granular data that I do recommend. But just to keep it nice and simple, I do this even for brands that, could have some of these other tools. Analytics, cohort analysis, and I look at the last like 1 to 3 years of data. What is the lifetime value of a subscribe and save customer versus not a subscribe and save customer? And when LTV is identified as the problem, if for some of these high LTV brands, oftentimes there's way more LTV to be unlocked if you just do one thing: improve order one, subscribe, and save take rates. It's like it's like the highest leverage thing. And I will just like sit on that problem until it's fixed. And usually if the problem is going to be fixed, it's usually fixed on that. And it's
interesting.
I love that. I love that little, like when I see a brand that has like, let's just say like order one AOV of $100 and a 12-month LTV of like $200 to $300. But then you look at the subscribe and save customers and it's like $400. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe almost twice as valuable for subscription, but they're only getting 25% of first-time customers to subscribe. My head goes to, what offer can we run to get that 25% to 50 to 75%? Even if CAC goes up by $10, if I can get an extra $200 of value, maybe an extra $100 of contribution margin. So basically it's a 10 to 1. You spend $10 to get $100. That's where I love to dive into for those brands.
I was literally gonna say, as you were talking, like we've seen the same thing, and one counterintuitive. This is taking what you just said maybe a level deeper and talking about like where it hits the P&L. We have seen oftentimes the right offer with a steeper opt-in discount, right? So actually the order one economics are worse. We've seen that produce more 90 plus day LTV. And it really is about understanding the acquisition and the retention economics. And when you combine them, oftentimes for high LTV brands, we've found the same thing, that even though order one profitability looks worse, by month 3 plus, it's significantly better.
Yeah, and one mistake I sometimes see with brands that are trying to fix this specific problem are they'll think about their unit economics on order one. And I would actually kind of flip it and say, don't care about that. Just consider like your net loss on order one as like your net sales minus variable expenses minus ad cost for CAC, and you get some loss, and then just compare all of that to the lifetime contribution margin from those cohorts. If you start thinking about how much money you lose when you also factor in the variable expenses, and you're like, oh, well, I wish I could just sell it for a bit more. That's not the game you're playing. The game you're playing is when people try my product, they love it. And I like print money over the long term. If you're one of these brands, I just want CAC to be as low as possible. And you can almost think of it as like fully loaded CAC, including order one loss.
Totally.
I never recommend brands to look at it that way, but for funnels like this, that's kind of my general recommendation. And then for like high SKU count stores, it's a whole other kind of thing to think about. But for high LTV stores, that's definitely where I start.
Well, and one thing that we do to help brands see this more clearly, what you were just talking about, is we show them this chart that shows trailing 12-month combined total new customer loss against total returning customer contribution margin dollars. It can be hard, like obviously you can look at it at a cohort level, but what really matters in terms of the global P&L, the company's P&L every single month, is that you're driving more returning customer margin dollars every month than you're losing incrementally, right? Or marginally on new customers. And you can kind of almost see, depending on how fast you're scaling ad spend, when you've reached the inflection point, that you actually might need to slow down a little bit on new customer loss. And it's not that you don't have healthy LTV on those new customers. It's just that you're losing a bit faster than the layers of returning customer margin dollars are coming back, or what you guys call Aplo LTV velocity, right? You've kind of like outpaced the LTV velocity with your new customer loss. So it's almost like, I always use this when I talk to brands, I like to think about the seesaw. The seesaw is like, on one side, we'll call it returning customer loss velocity. And on the other side, it's new customer loss velocity on one side and returning customer margin LTV velocity. And you can't go, if one goes too fast versus the other, you reach this issue either in not acquiring enough customers or losing too much in absolute dollars, maybe not on an order level, but in absolute total dollars. And so anyways, this is something super helpful to have the right people on your team to help you navigate this. You mentioned the high SKU count game. I actually want to look at the apparel game specifically, because we have some mutual clients that are playing the apparel game, and the retention piece is so key, because we have a couple apparel brands that we work with where the strategy, the growth marketing playbook strategy from a financial standpoint is, I'll call it break even-ish on new customers, right? Break even-ish. All of your contribution margin every month comes from returning customer sales. So if retention breaks down, huge problem for that brand, because we're break even-ish on new customers. What are some of the things that you see, Dylan? Like from my standpoint, I feel like the biggest lever, at least for the apparel brands that I have specific experience with, it's new product launches, right product at the right time being sold into returning customers or existing customers. But I'm curious, like, besides the product launch, tactically, whether it's email or other things, like what do you on the growth marketing side see that needs to be firing on all cylinders for retention to not break down for a brand like that?
I actually think that the answer is just more new products. And I think that for a lot of brands, sometimes, like, I think of some of the examples where I've seen brands go from having bad LTV to good LTV. And it's rare that you go from bad to great, because often it's baked into the product category, but bad to good, And I've known brands that went from launching one new product a year to launching like 20 in a year. And I actually think that volume of like, you don't want to just like double your product launch strategy. How do you like 5 to 10x it? I think that is like the order of magnitude that is probably worth pondering. And it doesn't mean you tend to 10x your dollar value investment into new products, but maybe you just do more new products with lower MOQs. Clothing's hard with that, because you do have seasonality risk often, not always, but often. So like if you buy a a seasonal product, you may not, and you do a low MOQ and it crushes, you may not have enough time to get the next re-up on the higher quantity. So that's a little bit of a different game where your product picker becomes incredibly more valuable, because it's not just demand planning at that point for like your current products. It's actually like who comes up with the new products and assigns a conviction. That's a very human process. There are ways to kind of try to do it statistically, but tends to be easier to do that if you're a bigger brand than like a, you know, a smaller brand, 7 to low 8 figures. So yeah, with clothing and apparel, it's definitely a volume game. I think the brands that we're seeing crush the most in apparel right now are the ones who are launching the most product. And you have to launch good product. But I think that, like, the analogy I would use is like, let's say like an average product picker in terms of like, I'm coming up with a new product. Let's say you have like a 2 or 3 or 4% hit rate. You then might have like a really good person have like a 10% hit rate, where 1 out of every 10 new products you launch or a really popular item or line or whatever. Like 10% is still super low. It's a volume game. New products are a volume game. And I think that more and more brands are going to think of their marketing strategy more as inventory strategy and brand building around quality product. And I think you're going to see more of the OpEx line in brands go into product strategy than having like more people in marketing or more people in ops or more people in this or that. I think that that's the future.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say that I have been speaking with a few apparel brands that Free to Grow is not yet working with. And I'm kind of, you know, advising them through thinking about that apparel game. And I like the new product launch side of that is critical and is for sure like the biggest driver of, in my opinion, we'll call it contribution margin dollar growth over time, right? But the key is being able to manage your balance sheet risk at the exact same time, right? And the balance sheet risk, CFO is definitely a key part of that, and being able to do the balance sheet projections and the associated cash flow projections. But as you mentioned, whoever owns inventory planning, right? And the process that you follow is really, 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 really important. And we're starting to talk about that more and more on this show, because, you know, that Free to Grow and Aplo are starting to realize, like, together how important this is to the ultimate success of the business. You don't have the right products being launched at the right time and even ordered at the right time, right? And available at the right time. All of the projections that we do, all of the strategies that we help deploy can be meaningless in many ways. And I know we've talked about this on like other episodes in some degree before, but I think it's important for us to kind of revisit right now and rehash what is, in your opinion, the high level process that a brand should follow, or some of the key best practices when it comes to demand planning?
When it comes to demand planning, generally from a workflow standpoint, I think that marketing should own the demand planning function in your org. It doesn't mean it has to be your agency. Like, we offer demand planning services, but it might be the head of marketing who oversees your ad agency. There's tons of different formats, but generally from a process standpoint, your marketing department should come up with what they expect sell-through to be based off of some top-line volume expectation. They then pass it to the finance team, and somewhere in that process as well, there would be a member who is, or a team member, or a third party who basically says, yeah, based off of the demand plan, based off of some of these new products, these are the PO that I think we should place. Finance then reviews, does this make sense in relation to the balance sheet? If yes, great, someone make a PO. If no, take it back to marketing with, hey, like, you're forecasting 40% growth. That might be true, but we're in a relatively like soft balance sheet position right now. So given that situation, we want to be a little bit more conservative and try to get 20% growth over XYZ time period. Can you revise the forecast? I assume efficiency will go up as a byproduct, and so will the by SKU demand. So I think it's kind of like a circular process, if that makes sense, between pseudo two departments. But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on your side there, John.
Well, I guess what I'll say is I want to say explicitly that there's an objective component to inventory planning and then a subjective component, right? The objective component is something that I have called before on this show the momentum forecast. That is what the that's what the kind of statistical or mathematical forecast is of SKU demand based on empirical data, right? Your historical data. That serves as a baseline or the initial layer of potential demand for said products. That's like the objective side. The other thing that's objective is like historical data around lead times, cash flow, when payments are going to be due, how long it's going to take for transit times, right? Those are all grounded in data. Then the subjective side is what I like to call the intervention forecast. The intervention forecast is another layer, bringing in kind of like subjective, tribal knowledge. Different people on the team understand, hey, there's this nuance like Chinese New Year during this time of year, which is going to constrain, container and production capacity. Or, hey, we're doing this new promotion this year that we didn't do this time last year. So we need to adjust that baseline momentum forecast up, right? Or, hey, we need to adjust this forecast down because of this subjective thing that we know about. And you've got to be willing to bring into play both the objective and data driven and the subjective. I guess I'll say the other thing that's objective versus subjective is there's an objective measurement of what the financial statements are today, what the P&L is today, and what the balance sheet is today, right? And that's grounded in data, like what we're actually historically seeing in the financials. But then there's a subjective piece of the financials, which is how big of a bet are we willing to place? How much risk are we willing to take for a potential reward? And so you need to be willing to do both of those things. I see brands oftentimes optimize too much for the subjective or too much for the objective. And in reality, the best inventory planning decisions are placed by, marrying those two things up.
I'll just add that the more subjective it is, you always want to consider your balance sheet in any decision, but the more subjective it is, I would say the more balance sheet risk there is. And as a byproduct, you want to treat it as such.
Totally.
That's why for a lot of new products, MOQ counts initially are lower. It's easier to do that in low seasonality businesses where I've made this new thing, it's March. I can live if I under order because I'm going to get some in May. But if you're selling like a summer seasonal product, you may not want to wait, till the next summer to actually validate. So that's the one caveat.
For sure. Okay, so I want to end by talking about what may seem like out of place in this discussion, because this discussion is about improving performance when retention is a problem. New customer dominant game. All right. Where does retention fit in that? And the reason I'm asking this is because we just recently started working at Free to Grow CFO with a very new customer dominant brand, and they have very healthy. They have a very healthy AOV and a healthy margin, which is driving healthy margin dollars before ads, right? And even at like about $100 CAC, they have nice profitability in dollars per order for new customers. The main thing they have going for them is I think there's TAM left in the market, or in the channels that they're operating in, but they've got sufficient dollars per order of margin available to continue absorbing a rising CAC. But the question is, what can be done with retention, right? For a heavily new customer dominant brand to try to, again, I think this maybe goes back, Dylan, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Is like, I think this goes back to like, we're not going to go from like no LTV to great, but can we go from no or little to like something more, and it does make some sort of an impact? So do you have any like takes or advice on how to think about retention for a brand that is heavily new customer dominant?
I mean, it would probably come down to making products that are complementary or in the same realm that then have good lifetime value. But more often than not for those businesses, you're going to be really honest, which is always the goal. You're going to get your return customer LTV by going into wholesale at some point.
I was literally just thinking the same thing.
And that is your recurring lifetime value. They're retailing
Totally.
your customers and they buy again and again and again. So like that is effectively how you solve that problem at scale. Now, if you have like a true moat, you might last in D2C, but depending on how many dollars of contribution left in that business, I would
Yeah.
basically say, I have this thing, it's printing cash. Reasonably, I can expect it to print cash for X number of years into the future. I'm going to assume the revenue durability of this business is not the best. I'm going to have a really aggressive net new product strategy because for all I know, that product might last for 8 years. I don't know. It could
Totally.
last for 2.
Yep.
But I don't know. So as a byproduct of this, I'm trying to get diversified on the ad side, so my digital business stays effective. I'm placing the new product bets. I'm going to do the best practices. I'm going to do the right stuff on email, the right stuff on like general product strategy for LTV, but I am trying to get more products so I have more diversified funnels, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into retail. I have no idea what this business sells or how big they are, but I would assume relatively soon I want to get into retail.
Totally. 100% agree. And what I was telling them is like, look, I think we should explore new product strategy, but let's like be really honest with ourselves about what is a natural extension of your product line. That's probably the biggest mistake that I see made by heavily new customer dominant brands is they think they're launching a product that is like a natural extension of their existing hero product, and it just isn't, and it doesn't catch on, and they go place this huge order, this huge PO for the initial order. It doesn't catch on, and I'm like, I don't know what this is for this particular brand. What they sell, there could be 2 use cases within a family, maybe 2 or 3. So like if someone buys it, there's a chance that there's 1 or 2 more opportunities to sell the same thing into that, household. So it feels to me like that's a better move for them potentially than like really truly net new products. But I was like, let's explore new product introductions, but let's be really honest with ourselves about what's a natural product line extension. And they had some good ideas for what they sell. They sell products that go inside cars, right? And they had some good ideas for, I think, natural extensions of their product line. But I'm like, I also did coach them on, let's think about how to place bets that are commensurate with the risk, that are really risk balanced, risk adjusted, to make sure we don't overextend ourselves on testing these new products.
Sometimes in categories like that, part of me is just like, I don't even really care about LTV. I'd rather just find other products that work on Facebook, but have it be like the risk with that path. Because we work with some brands and we worked with brands that kind of have taken that stance. And again, I said, don't care about LTV, like do the basics, do like the best
For sure.
practices, but like you just like accept that you're probably not solving it barring a huge change. Is you sometimes start going so far out of the ecosystem of what you're already selling. It can work. You can make money on like an ad arbitrage, but you want it to be close enough ideally that you can actually build a brand of like-minded customers over time.
For sure.
Organic and referral and brand awareness generally goes up over time. So that's like the delicate balance when you kind of just take the hard turn and you say, hey, I'm just going for more new customer funnels that work. That can work. Because there's like notable D2C brands that have done that. But the ones that have done it the best and likely reached 9 or multi-9 figures in revenue are often the ones, in my opinion, that have still gone after that same core customer. Maybe it's in a different part of their life. Maybe like,
for sure.
I have no idea what the car company sells. Like maybe there's a product for their car and a product for their living room. I don't know.
Totally.
You're still selling to the same like avatar, if that makes sense.
100%. Well, look, this is a great episode. There's something for every brand here, like regardless of what game you're playing. Any final thoughts, Dylan?
If you're a high LTV brand, obsess over your subscribe and save take rates on order one. That's plain and simple. I've seen so many, and I've seen so many in the last like 6 to 12 months just completely change the investability of their funnel just by improving that take rate. So it's increasingly becoming like my favorite thing to try to improve.
For sure. I think my final thought is just that like no matter what game you're playing, well, actually, here's my final thought. Know what game you're playing. You playing the new customer dominant game, the apparel game, high SKU count game, high LTV game. Know that, because you got to know where retention fits in to said game, right? Because you want to attack retention to drive the outcome that retention should drive in the game you're playing. And it's not the same for each game. So know your game, know where retention fits. That's a wrap.